Welcome everyone to Chola Chess Grandmaster Norm Tournament. Here the arbiter starts the clock of Ethan Vaz, the youngster who's born in 2010, very talented youngster of Indian chess, just 15 years old, and he has opened the game with pawn to d4 against Aronyak Ghosh. Now, both Ethan and Aronyak would be wanting to make their GM norms here. Both of them need a final norm to become a GM, and because both of them have a high rating. Whoa, Trompowsky. By the way, Ethan doesn't play 1d4 at all. He plays generally e4, and here he goes for Trompowsky. He surprised his opponent, and they both need 6.5 points in this tournament. They are on 1.5 out of 2. Will India get its next grandmaster? And this is a critical encounter between them. Ethan takes on f6, and this is a very sharp line because you can take back with the pawn here. That's also fine. You can also take with the g pawn. Aronyak decides to take with the g pawn. A very brave chess by Ethan, I must say, because in a tournament where you have a fixed aim in mind, that is to score 6.5 points to get your GM norm, your GM title, you don't want to be experimenting. But here he is, ready to take on the challenge, and I think that's a great mindset, by the way. Bishop takes c5 is hanging in this position, and Ethan decides to play pawn to e3. So black has the bishop pair, while white has slightly better structure. Bishop takes c5. And now generally you would play bishop e2 castles and then strike with c4. That's how you want to play this position. Aronyak Ghosh, of course, I think he has been one of India's highest rated IMs for years now. At some point, if I'm not mistaken, he was even close to 2550. Now he's 2533. So he clearly has the strength to become a GM. 2 GM norms in the bag already. And he castles here. He's not afraid of his king being weak, and he puts his king to kind of relative safety. Pawn to c4 by Ethan, striking in the center, and now Aronyak can push the pawn forward, but he decides to take it. D takes c4, and now if you take bishop takes c4, then maybe even queen exchange could be possible. So Ethan plays queen c1, and very smart, because when the opponent's king is a bit weak, you want to keep the queens on the board. And that's the reason why he's played queen c1, eyeing the c4 pawn. Queen comes up to e7, defending the bishop. And now queen takes c4. The queen would want to swing over to the king side. He plays pawn to f5 and stopping any queen g4 ideas. So Ethan brings his knight to c3. One of black's problems is, of course, the bishop on c8. How to bring it into the game? A move like b6 is possible. He plays bishop d7, a much more measured approach, and I think the right one. Now you want to maybe play e4. I think that's not a bad idea to push e4, but first Ethan brings his rook into the game. I like this simmering tension in the position. It's equal, but it's not like a dull equality. It's very dynamic. Rook comes to d8, and Ethan brings his queen to f4. A dream scenario, of course, would be to go queen g5, queen h6, knight g5 into the position. And he goes bishop to b4, putting pressure on the knight on c3. And Ethan brings his rook into the game. 30 minutes for Ethan, 45 minutes for Aronyak. Bishop goes back to c8, and now you want to trade pieces as black. As many pieces as you can, go into an endgame. e4. Ethan is like, I'm opening up the position. Let's go. Well, one idea is to simply take on e4, but he first takes on d1. And Ethan now responds back with rook takes d1. Pawn to takes on c3. He also trades the bishops and now pushes e5. Well, this is a very interesting move. The queen, of course, needs to move, and then you could even push the pawn one step ahead. So he goes queen h6. Now, if you take here, knight g5 is a killer blow, because if f6, you have a check coming in and it's very strong. So he goes queen e6, offering a trade of queens. And once again, Ethan is like, I'm keeping the queens on the board. Fantastic play. Keeps the queens on, threatens knight g5 at the right time. Queen comes to g6. 13 minutes for Ethan, 27 minutes for Aronyak. Bishop b5, lovely move. Threatening bishop c6 and knight e5. He takes on e4. He's trying to get tactical here, Aronyak. Bishop takes c6 now. Takes it. If you take back here, knight takes e5 and white is clearly better. So you must take off the knight. And he plays e takes f3. Bishop takes f3. White's position is definitely preferable, especially because the black king is weak. But the material is even right now. Queen to e7 played. And you can see that Ethan has 5 minutes. We are on move 24. They need to make 16 more moves. Queen c2. Now that's a mistake. That's a huge error. He's just simply blundered a pawn. Should have gone queen e6. But maybe queen c2, he gives a check. If king h8, then queen takes e5 check. Aronyak comes back. Queen g6, and now Ethan is like, thank you so much for the free pawn. And now bishop e6. Well, does black have enough compensation for the missing pawn? I'm not so sure. a3 played by Ethan. He just needs to make move 40. 13 more moves to make in 4 minutes. Not easy. Rook comes to c8. Trying to put pressure on the c3 pawn. And he goes h4. Very good move. Taking away the back rank issues. And also the h pawn can become a big attacking unit. Queen g7. Trading and going into an endgame would be a wrong decision, because then these pawns are tremendously weak. Keeping the queens on, right decision. But can the c3 pawn be taken here? But there's rook d8. Oof. So not at all. Queen f6 first played. And now threatening rook takes c3 because the d8 square is controlled. He's also attacking the h4 pawn. Whoa, rook d4 played by Ethan. Beautiful move. Defending c3, defending h4. h6 played by Aronyak. 30 moves done. And Ethan is keeping up the pace on the clock. Bishop g4. I think trading the bishop's a good idea. This is a really strong bishop that black has in the position. Takes on g4. Rook takes g4. King f8 played. And now queen g3. A nice move. Eyeing in this direction. Also rook g8 check is a big threat. So king comes up to e7. I think this king can get checkmated here, is the feeling. Rook e4. King goes back. You can repeat here. Rook g4. Gain time on the clock. Yes, he does. Smart play there by Ethan. He was at 4 minutes on move 27. We are on move 35 now. He still has 4 minutes. He goes rook to d4. Improving the position of the rook. King comes back to f8. And now maybe rook d6 makes a lot of sense. He goes king h2. And Aronyak goes rook e8. And rook comes to f4 now. 38 moves done. And queen comes up to e5. Pinning the rook and the queen. Look at this. He goes queen f3. Maybe g3 next. King g2. There's one more move left to move 40. Then they get 30 extra minutes. Queen c7 played. And Ethan now makes his final move before move 40. Writes it down. And gets up from the chair. He's made it to move 40, keeping his advantage intact, and that is a big achievement now. Now he has to convert this. That's never easy. Conversion in chess is one of the toughest things to do. Queen d5, threatening a tactic perhaps with queen takes e6. And Aronyak goes queen e7. Can we go check here on a8? He pushes his pawn to a4. Just improving again. That pawn, maybe c4 is also an idea. Later you want to play a5, creating the c passer. King g7 played by Aronyak. He's keeping his king. Here it's not safe anywhere on the board. That's the problem for black. But now Ethan taking a lot of time at this point. He's down to 18 minutes. He has to be careful. King goes back to g8. And now can we go rook g4 check? Maybe he'll just block with rook g6. So queen comes up to d5. And king g7 played by Aronyak. Pawn to h5. He pushes his pawn, clamping down the structure, and pawn to a5 played here by Aronyak. And now queen d4 check. The king moves to h7. And queen d3 check played. The king goes back. And somehow Ethan is trying to make progress, but Aronyak is just as solid as a rock, you can say. He's not giving any opportunities to his opponent. Ethan gives a check as well. And now king f8 played. He gives a check. The queen blocks it. And maybe it's a good possibility to go into a rook endgame, but that's also not that great. So he keeps the queen, which is a good idea. But Ethan now down to 4 minutes once again. And remember, there's no increment now. This is the final time control. So queen f3. And this must definitely be a worrying thing for Ethan here. The fact that he's not able to win. A lovely move, rook g6, taking advantage of the pin here to attack the b6 pawn. And h6 pawn as well. He goes queen c5. Now threatening the h5 pawn. And rook f6. Maybe a better move was g4, defending everything. But rook f6, he takes the pawn on h5. Now the material is equal. King g2. And now an important move, which is queen d5 to trade queens. Will Ethan trade the queens here? How good is the endgame? He takes on d5. Rook takes d5 taken. And now you can simply snatch the pawn on b6. He takes it. He's now a pawn up. He's also attacking the h6 pawn. h5 played. And you can't play rook b5 yet because takes and the a pawn is very strong. So rook c6. Defending the c3 pawn. King comes up to g7. And now maybe f4, king h3, king h4. He goes king f3. And pawn comes up to f6. The rook swings over to c4. And king comes up to g6. Now winning this rook endgame is not an easy task. But now you want to trade rooks as white. By the way, 1 minute left only for Ethan. New score sheet given because 60 moves completed. He goes rook d4. In fact, 62 moves completed. Rook e5. Aronyak playing with so much of experience here. He knows that his opponent has to try and win this, and it's not going to be easy. Although one can imagine Ethan putting his rook on f4 and then trying to get his king in slowly should do the trick, because a4 is defended, f2 is defended, everything looks fine. Rook d8 played, and now we could go rook d4 potentially to bring the king this way. Well, c4 played by Ethan. He starts pushing his pawns on the queen side. And rook to b8. Maybe now just c5. Because there's no rook b4, I can simply take it. So c5 played with the idea of rook c4 and pushing the pawn forward. King f5. And now rook to c4. Yes, he brings his rook behind the pawn. King comes up to e6. And c6 played. The king comes even closer, but can we go c7? I think Ethan's got this. c7, the rook goes to c8, and now king f3 maybe? Or what do you do? Maybe king e3, because take, you are fine with it. Oh, he goes rook h4. He changed his track, but it's a nice move. Because after rook takes pawn, you want to take on h5 and attack a5 pawn. So takes on c7, take on h5, check to the king. If king d3, there is rook f2 hanging. You need to keep the king active, king e3. And there's no way to defend this pawn now. A rook trade wouldn't work. That would be lost, because the white pawns are just too quick. So rook c3. And king d2 played, and now the c3 rook is hanging, the a5 pawn is falling, and here Aronyak Ghosh trying to find a way forward, and he resigns here. Ethan Vaz wins, and what a win, what an important win this is for him. With 2.5 out of 3, he's moving closer to his dream of becoming a GM. In the remaining 6 rounds, he needs 4 more points to score in order to become a grandmaster. Well, his opponents are not easy here. Everyone's strong. He hasn't yet played a GM who is here. There are 3 GMs playing, but I believe the youngster is already GM strength and beyond, and should be able to achieve this feat. But let's see. An amazing initiative here by Chola Chess in Chennai, doing this GM norm tournament for players in India who generally have to spend lakhs of rupees to go outside India and play tournaments. But doing this in India for them is, I think, a great opportunity, and I think it'll surely lead to more GMs coming India's way. 92 right now, and maybe we'll reach 100 at the end of the year if these tournaments continue. I hope you enjoyed this game, and there's an interview by Himank Ghosh with Ethan after the game, which you can enjoy now.
Yeah, so I surprised him with first move d4, and then I went for the Trompowsky variation. I think he didn't expect me to play d4 because I have almost never played it again. And yeah, so then he thought which variation to choose, and then the position came out equal, and then I got my queen to f4, and I was trying to do something, but it was probably still equal. But then later on, when he made a mistake with queen c2, it just allowed me to play queen g5, and I won a pawn. And after that, I was low on time, so then I exchanged the bishops, and then I repeated once to reach the 40th move faster. But after the 40th move, I was like struggling to just convert the game. And it was very tough. Even at the end, like I had 2 minutes and it was not very clear. And then the queens got traded, and it was still not clear whether I was winning or not. But luckily, I found the win and very happy.
It was indeed a great weekend. As you mentioned, even though your pawn up, it was not very clear to you what the winning plan is. With such low time, how did you figure it out, the way out?
I mean, I was putting him in zigzag again and again, like slowly I was just moving the queen and getting the same position, and slowly he cracked, I think. Maybe he could have moved the king instead of like going rook e5. But okay, it was a very complicated game, and I'm just happy that I won the game.
And I think a great start over here is going on 2.5 out of 3 points. How do you feel about the play so far?
Yeah, first round game was just a theoretical draw, and second game it was equal, but I managed to win. I'm very happy about that. In today's game also, converting was very tough, and I managed to do that. So I hope to play like this for the remaining games.
It's great to hear. Thank you so much, Ethan, for your time and best wishes for the upcoming months.